Testing. Alright, just doing this quickly. All right, this room is hot, so I'm just gonna try to get through this very quickly, so I can open back the windows. Outside it was very noisy with dogs barking and everything, and I had to close the window. Can't turn on the fan or the wind will be way too much. So I'm really recording this so I can repost it to YouTube. Um, Most people had said they wouldn't be able to join live, which is fine, but anyone who does join, that's great too. So in Barbados and the Caribbean, we often have a challenge with what I can see for myself, have experienced for myself, and from doing outreach and collecting some business questions and challenges from other people, I saw the same themes recurring around financing, marketing, branding, visibility, AI, everything. So I tried to group all the questions really by theme, and I'll try to read out some of them specifically, but we'll see how many we get to. So I want to jump straight into that. I made some bullet point notes. So the first one was from Jamal Maynard, and he was asking, how do you position yourself among all the noise, especially with AI and so many people doing similar things? How do you stand out and sustain? And in a few cases, I'll have to paraphrase the questions. So, to address that, my first thing was that most markets, modern day even, they're still not saturated. They're actually misaligned. So, you're either invisible, unclear, or in the wrong room, essentially. So, the example I often give to people is that Chefette has been around for decades and they still advertise. Why is that? Because they know that that visibility is currency, even modern day. And um, for most people, especially service-based businesses in Barbados who don't have products like, say, snow cones, the snow cone vendor is out there pushing his product daily. He's highly visible. The coconut sellers roadside, tons of traffic passes there. So for most people who have a service-based business, if you're just sitting in your room at home or in an office somewhere, you don't have that visibility. So, how what's the first step that you can take to getting that visibility? Of course, is getting online. So, oftentimes I tell people don't even worry about running ads as a first step. Step one is utilizing all of these free platforms. Here I am going live on YouTube because I want to record this, upload it later where it can stay and, keep getting some views over time. YouTube, by the way, is a good platform for longevity. But in any case, an even simpler first step is, of course, Instagram. Most people have a personal Instagram. And in many cases, I would see people sharing other people's posts or, when there's those promotions or giveaways, people would easily follow the instructions they have. So, for example, share our post and tag 5 friends and share it to your story and repost it. People take all those actions for another person's business or for a giveaway, but wouldn't do it for their own. So, step one is just getting that visibility, and it starts with getting online because you'll hear the same themes coming out as I give some of these answers. Principles don't change, and these themes aren't changing. You have to align whatever you're doing and the tools to the modern era or the era you're in, I should say. So right now, the modern era calls for online, online, online. Offline still works, don't get me wrong. If you go on the street corner right now and hold up a big sign, it will get attention. But most cases, the um, lowest effort action you can take on a first step is yes, getting at least one profile set up online. And if I Google your service, for example, or business name, do I get any results? You That's a simple test you can even do. Google your name, product, service, whatever it is you have. And if you're not seeing many results there, well, that's not a good sign. Also, if I land on your page, can I instantly understand what you do? So the visibility and clarity beat novelty every single time. If you can't be found, people can't buy from you, people can't hear what you have to say, people can't get your messages, all of that. I'm not checking the chat. So good night to anyone who joined in between there with my yapping. I had multiple devices set up, but I turned one off so I could just concentrate. So if you do make any comments or questions in the chat, I will try to pop back over and get to them. Question 2. I loved this one. I will paraphrase a bit, but I'll call the person K. I'll just use K for now. She was asking, how do you decide who to target and focus your marketing on, especially when you offer multiple services and are trying not to be too general? And I love this because oftentimes when people ask me questions, I hear the answers already in the questions they're asking. And sometimes it's a little ironic that they can't see it yet, but I love that. As in, love the opportunity to be able to just, yes, spill. So, number one, if you try to speak to everyone, you speak to no one. And I know how it is, especially as a creative, when you have all of these ideas in your head all the time. Entrepreneurs do it too. You have a million ideas per minute. You want to get them all out. You want to get them done. And you wish everyone would see the greatness in them and love them all as much as you do. I get it. But as I said, if you try to speak to everyone, you speak to no one. And I won't divulge the page because I didn't ask the person if I could share their name, sorry. But so I'll use some looser numbers. I looked at their Instagram page. Now, mine in comparison has 700 and something followers. I put in zero effort with that Instagram page and I still get leads. There is a gap where that person's spa page has over 5,000 followers and they're having a struggle with either customer retention then or something else. So what I would say is look at the data. What is your most booked service? And just like many other service-based businesses, a lot of these spa pages use Fresher. Now, Fresher has analytics. Most pages have analytics, but even if you don't look on the back end of Fresher, I'm sure from your own bookings, you can see, okay, what's the most booked service? When I browsed through the page, I saw a lot of massage photos and footage and mostly stock photos. I am assuming they let me not go there. They mostly look like stock photos and of people getting massages. Most spas that I've spoken to that seem similar, their most booked services actually say nails. No, your spa offers nails. Um, I'm not the target market because I got my nails done like a couple times ever when I first quit one of my manufacturing type jobs and was so excited I could finally get that stuff done. But the point is, so many people out there do want their nails done. And I would be willing to almost bet money that that is probably the most booked service that you have. But then the page, there's, misalignment there where all of the services are really pushing massages. Now, it might be that you prefer to do massages or want people to book massages, but sometimes, yes, we do have a clash in what people are asking for or ready to willingly pay for every month, for example, versus the other stuff. So massages are seen as a luxury oftentimes. Now, they shouldn't be. They should be regular self care, routine self care. But whether we like it or not, most people will see them as a luxury. Now, nail services, for example, would also likely be seen as a luxury. However, the difference would be that as I had to learn the hard way after that first set of fresh nails I got when I was feeling my girliest and everything, I quickly started to notice, oh, as your real nails grow, there's a gap there that doesn't look too appealing. And you either have to go back every 2 weeks or every 3, 4 weeks, however, to get your nails done. So that is more almost a subscription service where if the people want their nails to continue looking good, they're going to keep coming back. So that is probably one of the services I would say to even double down on and target those people instead of perhaps trying to target with the massage offers. One of the other things I saw, which is again similar to a lot of spa pages I've looked at, spreading yourself too thin. So there's a ton of services I can see being offered. And oftentimes, yes, our instinct is to think that, oh, well, when I offer all of these services, people will see the variety and more people will come. But it goes back to speaking to a more focused audience. More oftentimes with human beings, the way our brains work, the opposite happens. You see all of these services and people get overwhelmed and they actually take no action. So you might be surprised how many people have probably visited the page and end up clicking off. And the other point that goes along with a lot of the other stuff I have to say tonight is friction is not your friend. I see it all the time where people add friction, I would say probably unknowingly. And when I say this, I mean it in a huge way because it solves a lot of the issues people are having if they just fix these couple things. So, when I say friction is not your friend, especially for service based businesses, you want that when people actually do find your pages, your profiles, that they can take the action you want them to take easily. And that is likely booking a service. So when I go to most of these service-based pages, and I'm a foodie, it doesn't even matter if it's food, spa services, dental, it doesn't matter. Sometimes there's a bunch of unnecessary friction where you have to put yourself in the shoes of the person having the user experience. In this case, say me, and do a friction audit checklist. So can I immediately see what you offer? More often than not, when you go to these pages, you feel like you're hunting for the information. Can I immediately see the prices? Hardly ever. Can I immediately book or easily book? Hardly ever. Can I immediately pay? Hardly ever. Or there's nothing clearly laid out that tells a person what action to take and how and when. Can I immediately contact you? How? What are the options? Where are you located? How do I know your hours? And then on top of that, most pages, they have the nerve to get offended if people DM them or something. So what I would say is relook that um, whatever you have as your landing page, whether it is a what's it called, Instagram page, Facebook page, website, it doesn't matter. The same principles apply. So in most cases, you would be surprised how difficult your pages are to actually navigate. If you're like, this is not a great example. Don't look at my IG page as an example because in some cases I don't mind the friction. But if I'm doing it for somebody else, I highly recommend clarity, clarity, clarity. So for instance, when you go to your IG page, do that audit I just mentioned, and look to create one simple start here post. IG allows you to pin what, three posts at the top of your grid. You just need one pin post telling people all of those things. So to go over it again, you want a pin post just saying, hey, these are our general products and our services. This is, you don't have to put price range there, but tell them how to book, tell them how they can pay you or what are the payment options, and tell them where you're located, for example. Most profiles do not have any of that information or very little of it, or it's poorly laid out. In your Instagram name, for example, yes, most people might just put the actual name of the place, but you can actually pack more information in there. So let's say you were to put Teri's Spa hyphen massages, nails, and pedicures. At a glance, somebody already sees what you offer. In the bio, you add more relevant information. And then if you have a pinned post just saying, again, the services, the basics of what you offer, you would be surprised the wonders that works. So in most cases, like if I have to hunt, I'm going to spend my money elsewhere. I'm just gone. If most times you would be surprised how much potential revenue you use because somebody just clicked off. Moving on to the next question. This one I'll paraphrase because it was a bit of a long one and multiple people asked about financing. So financing is one of the biggest challenges. Collateral is hard. Everything is expensive. What real advice would you give someone starting in Barbados? I also love that one because this is where I do get to pop some bubbles and I don't mind that sometimes. You don't need capital first. you need validation first. And most people tend to, well, not even think of it or not look at it that way. I would say start with the service, not trying to build out all the infrastructure. And don't get me wrong, there's obviously exceptions to these rules, but most times we, like I said, get too attached to our babies, our creative babies, and we don't want to pivot or adapt to what we have in front of us, our resources. So yes, financing in the Caribbean in general is a huge limitation. Side note to if you actually do want financing, you're not limited by the Caribbean anymore. Those days are long gone. There are tons of grants available worldwide. Grants are free money. There are people out there waiting to literally give you money. Angel investors exist. There are some local ones, but regionally in the Caribbean as well as internationally, you have angel investor options, you have grant options. If you're interested in those things, DM me on, I guess, any of the platforms, and I would um, share some of those direct links with you because I know a lot of times people don't readily know them. The other thing I would say is in terms of finding them for yourself, use this free tool, Perplexity AI. That is like Google on steroids, I always say. So, whereas Google will give you good results, Perplexity pulls from a huge range of sources real time to give you even better results, put it that way. So, Perplexity AI, again, if you want a direct link for one of these things, just DM me, or I'll try to add all the links of tools that I mentioned in the description after I upload this video. But back to starting with the validation first, because in general, I still don't generally recommend trying to go after capital in the form of loans, which is often what people are thinking first and foremost. When they think, okay, I need money, they think bank loan or some other form of a loan. And oftentimes, especially for a new person getting into business, that will inevitably add a bunch of pressure that you don't need when you should be focusing on building. Um, Sometimes it might look attractive where the terms might say, okay, start repaying the loan in after 3 months. And you might think, okay, I can get my business up and running in a month and get profit by month 2, and by month 3, yes, I'll easily pay off. I have rarely seen that happen with anybody. Most times by month 6 or even 12, people are still feeling the pressure. And on top of that, the loan repayment requirements have already kicked in. So start with a service, as I said, build cash flow before the capital, start lean and validate, then scale. And those principles don't change regardless of the type of business you're running. So for example, um, if I was to come up with a quick idea to test and validate, let's say thinking about some of the necessary services or needed services in Barbados, a personal shopper would be a good one. And I might think, okay, I'll need something for people to book me, pay me, all of that. That's great. And it does have a place. But we often miss the validation step. The validation step is figuring out, are people even wanting the service truly, or is that just something in my head? And the next thing is, are people willing to pay for it? And then how much are people willing to pay for it? So going with the personal shopper example, I would use myself in there. I am a very lazy person when it comes to those kind of home chores. I I could do them, sure, but I don't want to, quite frankly. And if there's somebody that is willing to do it and you just have to pay them, I am one of those people who would just pay the person to just get it done effectively and efficiently. So first step is, like I said, validating. Start messaging the people around you and asking questions. I even did that where I said, okay, you know what? I want to start the live sessions this week. I don't have half of the things I need to have in place for it, but what's the first step? It was validation. So I started DMing people on my followers list on Instagram and asking a simple question and stating what the challenge was. Say, hey, I'm going to start a live session this Wednesday, 7 p.m. on YouTube or whatever I said. If you or anybody you know is building something, what's your biggest business challenge right now? And I got responses from it. So as I said, test and validate first. Then, of course, there's stuff like pre-selling, taking deposits, testing lean. Um, the minutes are flying, so I'll just move on to the other stuff. But if I mean, I might be cutting off some of my own thoughts here. So if there's anything you hear that does spark your interest and you want to keep the conversation going, just DM me on, like I said, any of the platforms, and I would answer the more specific questions. Obviously, in this case, I can't like go into depth on every single detail. Question 4: how do you find the right people or representation? It's hard to find good, reliable help. From somebody who is in a lot of management roles, I 100% get it. Um, I know we often feel that it's hard, and I can't discredit that at all. But what I would say is, and I've seen it for myself, the problem often isn't people themselves, it's the hiring system. So we often try to hire from desperation, and we forget to even have a system or good criteria in place before interviewing. So anybody who submits a CV, yeah, we take them, or we even give them an interview. And believe it or not, that's a place that you should add friction, where you don't need to even let certain things get that far. Most people ask generic interview questions, where you should be asking better, more pattern based questions. And I know this firsthand because in my past roles, I would often get questions from the other people in management saying, how are you finding these people? It's because I ask the questions in the interviews that I know actually matter, not what's the time in your life you dealt with a challenge. Maybe that wasn't the best example, but we're live here. I'm trying. Anyway, as I said, you need a good hiring system. And sometimes that's a good place where we need some internal reflection, some introspection, and ask ourselves, okay, am I the person to even find the people to do this task or to do the hiring? Because sometimes we like to wear all the hats, but you might not be good at a task. And I've seen that a lot of times. So there's a book by these guys, Dan Sullivan and Benjamin Hardy. I think one of them is a doctor, but anyway, um, who not how, and that talks about finding the person who can get the task done. So in some cases, it may actually be that you need to find the who that can do that task for you. So there are hiring agencies out there, and believe it or not all of them are expensive. Some actually work on a commissions basis, meaning if they do get the position filled for you, that's when they make money. Again, if you are interested in more on that topic, just shoot me a message and I will get the information to you. Question 5 was, oh wow, 724. How does one get over that initial fear of losing security and betting on themselves? Yes, we hear all the gurus and professionals claiming to take the leap of faith, but bills, cost of living, etc., are horrific at this time. What real advice can you share to give more encouragement and inspiration to make the move? And of course, I love this one. I had a soft spot for it because I know better than most what it feels like. And the irony is, I don't believe in blind leaps. So most people who are at least a little bit familiar with my story um, have even commented to me like, how were you able to leave those jobs just like that? There's actually never been a job that I've really, okay, only one time I really just really went home, I had enough and left the job. But more often than not, I start planning. I really do. And I don't by extension encourage those big leaps. As they say, look, we're not in the US, the opportunities are vastly different there. They're not impossible in our landscape, but it is way harder realistically. So, for example, things that you might not even think of, I guarantee you I thought of. And most people don't think of before they make the leap in this kind of landscape. So, for example, the banks here, um, even if you have a steady job, they want to see 6 months worth of pay slips or a job letter. Some companies say you can only even get a job letter after 6 months or a year. So some of these stipulations are crazy. Hence, it does take proper planning. For instance, if you were planning to get a loan for something, that's one of the things you want to plan ahead for. But anyway, as I said, I don't believe in blind leaps. I think people need to use your job as the leverage and the testing lab, and not just seeing it as your prison. So when I was still in those 9 to 5 jobs, I tested services while I was still employed. I used the resources around me. I used friends, family, all as the playground really to test small before jumping big. So by the time I made the so called leap, I already knew the kind of products or services that people were willing to pay for. I already was sure of myself and the capabilities because I had helped tons of people for free before. One perfect example is in maybe my second last job, I would have a lot of interns and temps come through. And it was a case where um, I noticed a pattern because I've reviewed hundreds of CVs over the years because I was doing the hiring in a lot of cases. And they often had the same problems. So poorly written CVs. That was a huge and consistent one. So it started as the interns and temps would come through, asking them, hey, um, do you want help with this? And often the answer was yes. No, I was lucky and blessed enough to have my mom who helped me with mine, and from there it was off to the races. So I never had to look back or get more help, but most people don't have that. So it's a case where I saw that gap, that need, and I started helping them for free, whether one-on-one or in small group sessions or anything. And more often than not, I got that validation because I saw that from there. um, they started getting callbacks for permanent positions, things like that. They would come back, thank me, all of that, fine. I also ran other types of more out the box experiments. So believe it or not, at one point, one girl was interested in. I had the website is probably still up right now, pinksaturn.com, but under that brand, I was offering more services targeting females, and one of them was about social etiquette or something or the other. Can't remember details, but the point is, I got to test that idea because I had that permanent job that gave me the security that I know, okay, every month I'm getting paid and I can afford to spend or make time to test these ideas. So I would say, instead of thinking of it of I have to do this or that, do both. And this might be some controversial advice in this last minute, but um, I had to learn the hard way. Sometimes you do have to dedicate a little less energy towards that permanent job because I'm sure y'all know the saying, these places would run you in the ground and replace you tomorrow. So I'm not saying to not do your job or your work and have integrity, all of that. But most times we might be putting in, I don't want to say too much energy, but in a sense, yeah, you can hold back a little bit for your own project. When you get home on evenings or the nighttime or even during the day, what you would see as your lunch hour, dedicate 15 minutes even towards building your own project. And I'm sure you would start to see a huge difference in the way your mind starts to work. When you make a firm decision and say, you know what, in a year or in 6 months, I want to be able to leave this job. What small step can I take every day to ensure that that is possible in a year, for example? Um, it's now 7:30 on the dot. I cannot see anything chat wise or anything. I'm gonna assume maybe there's none. I can see a few people viewing. Thank you for attending. I know I had to rush through some of this, but it really is hot in this room. Thanks for your attention, your time. I'll keep you posted on when the next live or anything is. As I said, if I mention any tools, I'll go back through this, list them in the description. If you have any follow up questions or anything, ultimately join the free wealth circle community that I have. I'm going to put that link in there too. Otherwise, you can message me on, like I said, any of the platforms you find me. But ultimately, try to message me in the group, the private group, because that's where I prioritize. All right. Thanks for attending and bye.